The first bell hadn't rung yet, but the campus buzzed with its usual early morning rhythm. Teachers poured coffee in the lounge. Kids gathered in small clusters on the courtyard benches, swapping homework answers and half-finished gossip. Over by the front doors of Westbridge Academy, a figure crouched near the glass, rubbing at a smear with a cloth. Marcus wore a navy polo with a school logo on the chest and tan work pants, knees darkened by years of polished floors and muddy footprints. A pair of old Asics kept his steps quiet. He didn't rush the glass. He rubbed slowly, deliberately, making tight circles with the rag until the smudge vanished. He knew the door would be fingerprinted again in an hour. That didn't matter. Behind him, the parking lot crackled with the sound of a Range Rover door slamming. A woman in high heels and oversized sunglasses marched across the pavement. Her son trailed behind, backpack sagging, mouth full of something green from the smoothie cup he clutched. "Excuse me," the woman called sharply, her voice slicing through the morning calm like a car alarm. Marcus turned, cloth still in hand. His face didn't register annoyance, just pause. "Yeah?" he asked calm. She looked him up and down before pointing toward the administration building. "You work here, right? Maintenance or something?" Marcus nodded once. "Good." The back door to the drop-off lane was locked. "Again, I had to walk all the way around. I don't know what system you're running, but it's not working." He looked at her, then at her son. The kid's eyes flicked up toward Marcus, then quickly back down to his smoothie. Marcus turned back to the glass and gave it one final wipe. "I'll check on that door," he said quietly. The woman huffed, shaking her head. "I don't think you understand," she said, stepping closer. "I donate over $30,000 to this school every year. I should not be inconvenienced because someone can't do their job." Marcus didn't flinch. He turned fully to face her now, eyes level. "I'll make sure it's fixed." She stared at him, waiting for something more. An apology, maybe. An explanation. She got nothing. The bell rang. Kids began funneling toward the entrance. She gave a dry laugh. "Unbelievable," she muttered, taking her son's hand and marching past him through the newly cleaned door. Her heels clicked across the tile floor. Marcus remained at the door, cloth hanging loose in his hand. No expression on his face. But he was listening. The school day had just begun. The hallway quieted after the second bell. Lockers slammed shut. Homeroom teachers took attendance. Somewhere upstairs, a printer jammed, and someone swore under their breath. Marcus moved through the building with his usual rhythm. Quiet, steady, unbothered. He passed the front office where a group of administrative assistants whispered over bagels and emails. Mrs. Roth, the receptionist with the perpetually startled expression, watched him pass. "Is that him?" one whispered, just low enough that they thought he wouldn't hear. Marcus didn't turn. Down the corridor, he entered the staff room. The custodian's shelf in the corner held extra rags, a clipboard with maintenance requests, and a set of keys. He replaced the cloth, checked the clipboard. One request, fix loose tile in music room. Dated 3 days ago. Still unsigned. He took a pen from his pocket, clicked it once, signed his initials, and turned. "Marcus, you got a minute?" It was Mr. Patton, the assistant dean. Mid-40s, tightly pressed shirt, tie already loosened. He closed the door behind him as he stepped in. "There was a parent complaint this morning." "Mrs. Langley," Patton said, rubbing the bridge of his nose like it hurt. Marcus leaned against the shelf. "She said you were rude, that you didn't address her concern." Patton didn't sound accusatory, just tired. The way someone sounds when they've had this conversation too many times and already know it's pointless. "She wanted the back door open," Marcus said. Patton nodded. "Right. And it's locked because we had a homeless man sleeping in the stairwell last week. Safety issue." Patton exhaled. "You're not wrong. But I didn't explain it." Patton hesitated. "You don't have to. But with parents like her." Marcus gave a short nod, then reached for the keyring. It jangled as he pulled it off the hook. "I'll open it," he said, "after I fix the tile." Patton didn't stop him. He just stood there as Marcus left the room, wondering how many more times they'd have this conversation. Down the hallway, Marcus passed a second-grade class lining up for library. One girl with curly braids tugged her friend's sleeve and whispered something, pointing at him. He caught the word. "Janitor." He didn't react, but later they'd learn his last name, and that would change everything. The music room was empty. save for a few unstacked chairs and the faint smell of old varnish. Marcus knelt near the back wall, his hand brushing along the floor until he found the loose tile. A small wobble beneath his fingers confirmed it. He pried it up gently, revealing the cracked adhesive beneath. He worked quietly, methodically, the way he always did. Through the open door, voices drifted in. 2 students, older, maybe 8th grade, stood in the hallway just outside, talking louder than they realized. "That guy's always here. Think he sleeps here or something?" "Nah, he's just the janitor." The word floated into the room and settled there. Familiar, heavy, misunderstood. Marcus didn't look up. He pressed the new adhesive into place and carefully reset the tile. Behind him, footsteps approached. Not hurried, but firm. "Mr. Marcus?" He turned. Ms. Ramirez, the school counselor, stood in the doorway, holding a clipboard to her chest like a shield. "Didn't mean to interrupt," she said, glancing at the floor. Saw the work order was finally marked. Marcus stood, dusting his hands on his pants. "It was loose. Should be fine now." She nodded, then hesitated, shifting the clipboard in her arms. "Quick question," she said, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're related to Mr. Langston, right? The founder?" Marcus's face didn't change, but his silence said enough. Ramirez gave a small, awkward laugh. "I thought so. You've got his eyes. I saw the photo outside the auditorium. Didn't realize it at first." Marcus nodded once. Still no smile. "Does anyone else know?" Marcus looked past her, out toward the hallway. "Not yet." She shifted her weight. "Is there a reason you haven't told people?" His voice was steady. "I wanted to see how they treat people without the name." She blinked. Took her a second to respond. "Guess that makes sense." He picked up his toolkit, nodded politely, and walked past her. Outside the music room, a bronze plaque hung on the wall. It had been there for years, mostly ignored. In honor of Samuel Langston, founder of Westbridge Academy, dedicated to excellence, equity, and quiet strength. Underneath, in smaller letters, Board Chair Marcus Langston. The students walked by it every day, but they never really looked. Not yet. The library smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paperbacks. Chairs were arranged in a circle for the weekly parent committee meeting. Coffee cups steamed on side tables. Laptops open, voices low, always polite. Marcus stood near the back, clipboard in hand. Maintenance was supposed to check the lighting issue before the meeting began. One of the recessed fixtures flickered faintly above them, unnoticed by most. Mrs. Langley noticed. She walked in 10 minutes late, crisp blazer, iced coffee in hand. Her eyes scanned the room, barely acknowledging Marcus as she passed him. "Oh, great," she said under her breath, loud enough. He didn't move. Principal Hughes entered next, tall, well-pressed, with a warm but guarded smile. She greeted the parents, shaking hands, giving practiced nods. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We'll be discussing upcoming fundraising events and updates to the student mentorship program." Marcus quietly shifted to the side of the room, standing near the bookshelf. From there, he could hear everything. Not that he needed to. Mrs. Langley raised her hand early. "Yes, Meredith?" Principal Hughes said. Langley smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I just wanted to address something small but, frankly, telling. This morning, I had a very frustrating encounter with one of the janitorial staff. It's fine, really," she added, laughing a little too loudly. "But I think we all expect a certain level of professionalism, especially at a school of this caliber." A few heads nodded. Others looked down. Marcus didn't blink. Principal Hughes shifted slightly. "I'm sorry to hear that. I'll look into it." Langley continued, warming up now. "I just think if someone works here, especially around our children, they should act like they're part of the team, not above their station." No one spoke. Marcus slowly turned and walked toward the exit. He didn't say a word, but as he passed the table near the door, he dropped a folded sheet of paper beside the principal's coffee cup. She saw it after the meeting. It was a printed copy of the school's founding board. At the bottom, Marcus Langston, board member, equity oversight. Principal Hughes looked up toward the now empty doorway, the paper trembling slightly in her hand. The room had moved on, but something was shifting, and it had already begun. Principal Hughes closed her office door quietly behind her. She stood for a moment in the stillness, holding the paper Marcus had left. The edges trembled slightly between her fingers, not from surprise, from the weight of what it meant. She sat down, clicked open her staff directory, and found the personnel file for Marcus L. listed under Facilities. She scrolled. Minimal notes. Excellent work record. No complaints. But no mention of board membership. No mention of who he was. A deliberate omission. She leaned back, thinking. It explained the quiet confidence. The way he moved through the school, not like someone trying to prove something, but like someone who already knew where he stood. Watching more than speaking. Taking notes others didn't realize were being taken. There was a knock. She slipped the paper under a folder. Come in. It was Ms. Ramirez, the counselor. She hesitated, then stepped in and closed the door behind her. You know about Marcus? She asked. Principal Hughes nodded slowly. I do now. Ramirez Saturday, I think. Some of us are starting to figure it out. A few teachers have noticed. The name on the plaque. The way he listens. But most of the staff? They still think he's just the janitor. There was no malice in her tone. Just something closer to regret. Hughes looked at her. Has he ever said anything? Ramirez shook her head. Not once. They sat in silence. Then Hughes spoke. I think it's time we had a conversation. Not about his role on paper. About why he's choosing to be invisible. Ramirez didn't answer right away. Then quietly, maybe he's not invisible. Maybe he's just watching who sees him before they're told to. The final bell echoed through the courtyard, followed by the usual eruption of backpacks, voices, and sneakers against concrete. Parents idled in luxury SUVs or waited in tight clusters, talking in low tones. Marcus stood by the south gate, checking that the latch had been fixed. Across the lot, Mrs. Langley was back in her usual spot, phone to her ear, sunglasses on despite the cloud cover. Her son leaned against a column nearby, scrolling on his phone. Where's the janitor? She said into her phone, just audible. The one from this morning. I don't want him near my kid. Honestly, it's unacceptable. She froze mid-sentence. Marcus had turned and begun walking directly toward her, calm, unhurried. Clipboard in hand. Nothing confrontational in his face. Just presence. Her words trailed off. She lowered her phone. Marcus stopped a few feet from her, eyes level. Ma'am, he said simply. Your son dropped his ID badge this morning. Found it outside the auditorium. He held it out. Langley blinked, caught off guard. She reached for it. Their hands didn't touch. But for a second, her fingers paused on the badge, eyes locking with his. Thanks, she muttered. I guess. Marcus gave a single nod, then turned to leave. Behind him, her son looked up from his phone, watching the man walk away. You know who that is, right? Another student nearby whispered to him. Who? That's Mr. Langston. He's on the board. Owns part of the school or something. The boy stared after Marcus, eyes wide. Mrs. Langley didn't hear. But the echo of that moment would stay. Because now people were starting to talk. Not about the janitor. About the man they had mistaken for one. The next morning, Mr. Winslow's 8th grade history class buzzed with the usual pre-lesson chatter. Desks were scattered with open laptops, crumpled papers, and half-eaten granola bars. All right, Winslow said, clapping his hands once. Today we're covering the founding of Westbridge Academy. Bit of local history before we shift to post-war economics. He tapped the smartboard and a slideshow flickered to life. Slide 1, a black and white photo of a younger Samuel Langston standing beside the original school building. Next to him, a small boy with big eyes and a stiff collar. Anyone recognize these names? Winslow asked. A few hands went up. Someone muttered, the auditorium guy. Correct. Samuel Langston founded the school. Focused on equity and opportunity. School started in a rented church basement. That little boy, his son, used to sweep the floors after classes. Grew up in these halls. A girl in the back raised her hand. Is that Mr. Langston, the janitor? Winslow hesitated. Then nodded. Same one. Murmurs spread across the room. No way. But he's always mopping. He's on the board? Winslow let it settle. He's more than that. He owns part of the school. He never left. Said he wanted to stay close. Wanted to see how people treat the ones they think can't help them. Silence now. Not from fear. From realization. Across the room, a few students shifted in their seats. A boy who once laughed behind Marcus's back stared at the floor. A girl near the window whispered, I called him just the janitor last week. Winslow clicked to the next slide, but no one was really looking. They were still thinking about the last one. The man who had been in the hallway that morning. The one who had opened the door and held it without saying a word. Now they understood why he didn't have to say anything. The faculty lunchroom smelled like microwave soup and stale coffee. Teachers trickled in and out during staggered lunch periods, eyes tired, voices quieter than usual. Marcus was there early, sitting at the small corner table by the window. Same spot he always took. His lunch was simple: an apple, a sandwich wrapped in foil, and a folded newspaper. Ms. Benton, the math teacher, stepped in and paused. She looked at him for a second too long before heading to the fridge. Hey, she said after a moment, you mind if I sit? Marcus nodded once, folding his paper and setting it aside. She sat slowly, opening her yogurt with a faint crack. I heard, she said, not looking at him. About the board. The history lesson yesterday, kids haven't stopped talking about it. Marcus didn't respond right away. Then, did they sound surprised? Benton gave a small laugh. Not mean. Just honest. More like confused. Like they were trying to reprocess every moment they'd ever passed you in the hallway. Marcus nodded. He didn't seem angry. Just tired. She glanced at him. You've been here, what, 10 years? 12? And all that time, you never told anyone? They never asked. Silence again. Then she said, quieter, I think I assumed things too. Without realizing. Marcus looked at her. I know. She looked down at her food, then back up. But it's different now. Marcus didn't smile. But his voice softened just a touch. We'll see. Just then, the door opened again. It was Mrs. Langley. She stopped short when she saw him. Her eyes flicked to Benton, then back to Marcus. She hesitated. No words. Just a second of pause. Then she turned and left. The silence returned, but now it felt different. Not awkward. Just honest. The monthly board meeting took place in the glass-walled conference room on the top floor of the administration building. Long table, sleek chairs, filtered water in glass bottles. Clean, quiet, professional. Everyone was already seated when Marcus entered. He didn't rush. He never did. Wore the same tan work pants and polo shirt. Still carried his clipboard. Some board members gave polite nods. Others, unfamiliar faces from the newer donor circle, gave confused glances, wondering if he was there to fix the projector or adjust the air conditioning. Then Principal Hughes stood and cleared her throat. Before we begin, she said, just a reminder, Mr. Marcus Langston remains our standing member of the board and chair of the Equity Oversight Committee. A silence swept the room. One of the newer members, a man in a crisp blazer, looked visibly thrown. I'm sorry, he stammered. You're on the board? Marcus sat, placed his clipboard gently on the table. I helped write the school's equity policy, he said calmly. 12 years ago. Before this building existed. The man blinked, mouth half open. Marcus didn't look angry. Just steady. Another board member, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, smiled faintly. I remember when your father brought you to meetings. You always brought a book. Sat in that corner seat. Never said a word. I was listening, Marcus said. That line settled across the room like a blanket. Principal Hughes moved on with the agenda. But for the rest of the meeting, every time Marcus spoke, softly, clearly, the room fell completely silent. People listened now. Because what had once looked like silence was presence. The following morning, the air had shifted. Subtly. Fewer half-glances. More stillness in the hallways when Marcus walked past. Doors opened a little quicker. I stayed up, not down. In the courtyard, Marcus swept leaves into neat piles. He didn't rush. The broom moved in quiet, practiced strokes. Then footsteps, clipped, uncertain, approached from behind. Mr. Langston? He turned slowly. Mrs. Langley stood a few feet away, hands clasped too tightly in front of her designer coat. Her voice, always polished, faltered now. I wanted to say something. About the other morning. About how I spoke to you. Marcus didn't answer. I didn't realize, she began, but he raised one hand gently. That's the part one keep thinking about, he said evenly. You didn't realize, and so you assumed. She looked down. I'm not here for an apology, he continued. You already showed me who you were. What you say now won't change that. Her lips parted, but no words came. He added, softer now, I'm here every day. You just never saw me. Langley stood still. A student passed behind them, backpack bouncing, earbuds in. Barely noticed either of them. The world moved on. Marcus returned to sweeping. Langley lingered for another second, then turned and left, slower this time. Not defeated. Just aware. The broom moved again, soft against the stone. Marcus didn't need vindication. What he needed was happening already. People were starting to look at each other differently. Starting with themselves. The gymnasium buzzed with chairs scraping, students murmuring, and the occasional mic check echoing off the high walls. An all-school assembly was rare. One that included the board? Even rarer. Principal Hughes stepped to the podium. Today, she began, we're talking about community. About what we value, not just in our grades or our test scores, but in how we treat each other when no one's watching. Students shifted in their seats. Teachers lined the back wall. Marcus stood just inside the side entrance. Still in work clothes. No name tag. No announcement. Principal Hughes gestured subtly in his direction. There's someone here most of you know by face, but maybe not by name. Heads turned. The murmur grew. He helped design the school's equity policy. Served on our board since its early days. And yet, most of you never knew. Why? Because he never asked to be seen. He chose to watch how we see. Marcus stepped forward slowly. No fanfare. No applause. He just walked to the podium and stood beside Hughes, arms at his sides. I don't have a speech, he said, voice quiet but clear. Just a question. The room fell silent. How many of you have walked past someone and decided who they were before they said a word? A few students lowered their eyes. Marcus scanned the room, pausing on no one and everyone. I'm not here to correct you. I'm here to remind you, how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you says everything about you. He stepped back. The mic didn't drop, but the message did. Later that afternoon, Marcus was restocking paper towels in the second-floor restroom when he heard soft footsteps behind him. A girl, no older than 8, stood in the hallway, hall pass in hand. She looked unsure, maybe even nervous. "You're Mr. Langston, right?" she asked. Marcus turned, nodding once. "My teacher said you help run the whole school. But you clean too." He didn't smile, but his voice was gentle. "I do." She looked at the pass in her hand, then back at him. "That's kinda weird." He raised an eyebrow, not offended. "Weird how?" "I dunno. Grown-ups with power don't usually clean." Marcus leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe real power means doing what needs to be done, no matter who's watching." She thought about that. Really thought. Like, even when people think you're just a janitor? He nodded. Especially then. She stood quiet for a second, then gave a small shrug. "I think that's kinda cool." He finally gave the faintest smile. "Me too." She turned to go, then stopped. "Oh. And I told my friend you were the boss and he didn't believe me. So I said, just watch how the teachers act when he walks by." Marcus chuckled, quiet, low. "Smart friend." She grinned, then ran down the hall pass flapping at her side. He returned to the cart, refilled the last dispenser. And in that ordinary hallway, under flickering lights and scuffed floor tiles, something quietly shifted. A child had seen and believed, without needing to be told. Every Friday, Westbridge hosted campus tours for prospective families. This week's group, 5 parents, dressed in business casual with polite curiosity, stood in the main office as the admissions director greeted them. As they began walking the halls, Marcus passed by with a cart of supplies. The director didn't acknowledge him. But one parent did, a tall man with a well-trimmed beard and a sharp navy blazer. He watched Marcus as he walked past, eyes narrowing slightly. "Is he with maintenance?" the man asked. The director glanced over her shoulder, nodded without interest. "Yes, one of our longtime custodians. Very reliable." They moved on. Later, as the tour passed through the library, the same man lingered by a framed board member photo display. He leaned in, paused, then tapped the shoulder of the parent beside him. "Hey, that guy from earlier, the one with the cart? He's up here." The other parent leaned closer. "Says he's on the board." Now the group was murmuring. The admissions director turned, startled. "Oh yes, that's Marcus Langston. He wears a few hats." She tried to move the group along, but they kept looking at the photo. And for the first time that day, their questions weren't about class sizes or test scores. They were about values, about what leadership really looks like, and what it means when someone doesn't need a title to command respect, just the patience to let others see it for themselves. The staff lounge was unusually full. Monthly faculty meetings rarely drew early arrivals, but today most had shown up ahead of time. The room buzzed with low conversation, cautious glances, and quiet recalculations. Marcus stood by the coffee machine, pouring a cup like he always did. No clipboard. Just calm. Principal Hughes entered and cleared her throat. "I know a lot has come to light recently," she began, scanning the room. "And I think it's fair to say we've all been challenged." A few teachers shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded. Hughes continued, "Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge Marcus Langston, not just for his role on the board, but for the grace he's shown in letting us meet him, not by title, but by behavior." Eyes turned toward him. Marcus didn't step forward. He didn't wave. He just nodded once, slowly. Then Ms. Benton spoke up. "I've been thinking about how many times I passed you in the hallway. Said thank you, sure, but never really saw you. That won't happen again." Another teacher added, "You changed how I think about leadership." Without even trying. A murmur of agreement followed. Not loud, but real. Marcus looked around the room, then said quietly, "I wasn't trying to teach anyone. I just wanted to see who you are when no one's watching." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was awareness. Because now everyone knew. They had been seen. The sun dipped low behind the trees lining the Westbridge courtyard. Golden light stretched across the flagstones and the last of the students filtered toward the front gate. Laughter echoed faintly, then faded. Marcus stood outside the auditorium, locking the side doors. His motions were unhurried, quiet. He looked up once toward the flag gently swaying on the pole, then turned toward the path leading to the maintenance building. A voice called out, "Mr. Langston?" He turned. It was the girl from earlier, the one with the hall pass. This time, her mother stood beside her, holding a lunchbox and wearing an uncertain smile. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said. "My daughter told me everything. About you. And about what you said." Marcus nodded. The little girl tugged his sleeve. "I told my class you're on the board. They didn't believe me. But my teacher said it was true. She said you helped build the school." Marcus crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. Not just build it, he said. Still working on it. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she didn't yet, but one day she would. They left. He watched them go. As the campus quieted, Marcus walked the long route back to the lot, passing the plaques, the trimmed hedges, the hallways that still whispered old assumptions. Behind him, lights blinked off one by one. Ahead, the path stayed lit. Not bright, but clear. He didn't need applause or recognition. He had something better now. They saw him, and they couldn't unsee him.